Stevie Williams, you've written a book. All Yours gives us a close-up view of a streetwalker's life and elaborates on your cooperation with the New York Police Department's manhunt for James Wells Campbell, the perfume killer, who terrorized the city with his brutal murders of 12 prostitutes. Let me begin by asking you, what brought you to the life of a streetwalker?
Well, when I was 10 years old, I kind of realized that my parents were a couple of saps, and I always seemed to be 6 steps ahead of them. So at an early age, I ran away from home and came to New York City. And at such an age, it was the only thing I could get into. Now, I couldn't become a doctor, so.
Well, what age were you when you arrived in New York?
14.
All right. And what age were you when you first began prostituting yourself?
14.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York.
And what was life like? You say that at 10 you already had outsmarted your parents, but what can you tell us about your parents or the way you were brought up or the life you had as a child?
Well, they weren't abusive parents. They were just a little straight for me. I always hung around with the older kids in school, and they were the type of parents where my father would come to the table in a suit and tie, and he'd call my mom Mother, and they were just always so nice to one another, all the time. And I just found that very boring.
All right. Did you have a sense that other children your age didn't have that point of view? I mean, did you feel isolated from kids your age?
Yes, I never hung around with kids my age. I always felt that I was a little bit more advanced than they were. I was looking for something more exciting in my life, and I hung around with people that were, I'd say, at least 10 years older than me, 8 years older.
Okay. Was there anything in your life up until that time that you could point to as an explanation for your being so different from those in your environment?
Not really, no.
All right. You came to New York and you became a streetwalker at the age of 14. What was it like for you? Certainly it must be a large shift in reality, going from home life in Poughkeepsie, where Mom and Dad wore ties and dresses to the dinner table, to the life of a streetwalker. Was it a shock or was it a relief? What was it for you?
It was a relief. I mean, it was something that I had been looking for since I was waiting to get out from under my parents and be on my own.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One might imagine that a girl prostitutes herself in order to realize some dream, or maybe to attain some goal in life. Is this the case for you?
No, I don't have any dreams or goals. I live from day to day.
Okay. December of 1984 marked the beginning of a murder spree that terrorized the city of New York. The name The Perfume Killer was assigned to this series of murders because the man in question would leave the bodies of the prostitutes whom he brutalized and murdered, doused with a particular brand of perfume. You were a streetwalker during the time that he was on his spree, if you will. And it lasted almost a year. did you have a sense of personal danger as you were working the streets of New York, reading the headlines that the perfume killer was on the loose?
No, it didn't really affect me. I never quite considered myself part of that group, I guess, that if he was going to go out after somebody, it wasn't going to be me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was never concerned about it.
Okay. I'm going to quote from your book, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
You write that, "I never felt part of any group, whether it's the group of women, a group of prostitutes, a group of Girl Scouts, or the women on my block, or the people in this city. When I read the newspapers, I have the feeling it has to do with everyone else but me." These certainly are the words of a very isolated woman, because I would think that most people have a sense of being a part of, if only the human race, a member of some group, or a member of the group of people who drive Chevrolets, or, do you understand what I'm saying? They feel...
I do, but I've always found myself different, and I never, in looking at other women, lump myself into that group, because I'm not like most women,
Mm-hmm.
nor am I like most hookers. So I don't feel that I can say that I'm in a group, because I'm an individual.
All right, Stevie, then one would want to ask you, what are you like, in your own words? I mean, have you an understanding of you?
I do. I deal mainly with people that I can negotiate with, and that makes me different from most other women.
Okay. You deal so often with men on a paying basis, on a daily basis, and one wonders what your relationship with men outside of work would be. Have you a steady man? Are you married? What is life for you in that area?
I am not married. I don't find, if someone falls in love with me, I'm not interested in them. I don't find that interesting. And if I fall in love with someone, it doesn't happen that often. And when it does, I don't really occupy myself with it. I don't pay much attention to it. So I don't get involved, really. I mainly deal with people that I can negotiate with. I get something, and they get something.
Could you... Now, we're not talking about customers now. We're talking about people just...
Whether it's customers or friends, or business, it's all the same.
Could you tell us a little about that, how that works on a personal level?
Well, let's see. For instance, if a friend calls me up and says, let's go to a movie, that costs. It means I either get a very expensive dinner, if there's a new dress that I need, I get that. Or if I need a weekend away at his condo, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But any time that someone needs to spend time with me, that costs them. Client or friend, it doesn't make any difference.
All right. Do you have friends that when you want to spend time with them, it costs you?
No.
Okay. There is someone that you did spend a lot of time with. His name is Bill Doran. He was a detective for the New York Police Department, and he was head of a task force that was mandated to apprehend the perfume killer. At a certain point in time, you were approached by William Doran, and he attempted to enlist your help in, I guess, working as a decoy and helping the police trap this man. What was your response at that time to his request?
What's in it for me?
Mm-hmm. And how did they respond to your response?
I don't know.
Were they shocked? Were they?
I guess they were. I really didn't pay too much attention to what their response was. I was concerned on what I was going to get, and the fact was I got what I wanted.
It's not written in your book, but in an article printed by the New York Times, William Doran made a statement about that first encounter with you. And with your permission, I'll read it.
Surely.
I was shocked. We spent 10 minutes describing in detail the gory scenes left behind by Mr. Campbell, the perfume killer. We felt at the time that this would encourage Stevie Williams to come to our aid in searching for this man. After a 10-minute build-up, we popped the question, and she looked straight-faced at us and said, "What's in it for me?" I don't think he was prepared for your answer.
Most people aren't.
Okay. It didn't occur to you that at the time that you were in danger, since prostitutes were this man's target, that in fact some, if not friends, that certainly they were acquaintances of yours, were numbers among those killed by the perfume killer, and yet you didn't feel any particular compassion or urgency about apprehending the man to the point where you would want to get personally involved.
No.
Do you find that curious? Do you find that that is an unusual way to think or feel?
No.
All right. Now, eventually you did get involved, and you did work with William Doran
Yes.
and his partners in the capacity of a decoy, a front man, if you will, point man. What got you to participate? What was it that they were able to offer you that elicited your cooperation?
Well, I had been picked up by Vice for prostitution, and I had a trial coming up, so I needed it thrown out of court, and it was. And there were a few other things that they did for me that they probably shouldn't have, and I think it'd be best if I didn't discuss that here.
Well, you say approximately the same thing in your book, but at least you did mention in the book, so I feel free to bring it up in the interview, that they supplied you with an NYPD press card, which was basically a police credential naming you as a correspondent to the New York Times, which allowed you to cross police lines.
Right, my get out of jail card.
Is that what
Yes.
that was?
Yes.
All right. And did you ever have the opportunity to use that get out of jail card?
I'd rather not say.
All right. Do you still have that card?
I'd rather not say.
Okay. Could you tell us then, most of the search for the perfume killer involved lengthy stakeouts where you were doing your job as a streetwalker, but you were wired, and they had a surveillance team watching you. They dressed you similar to the girls that had been murdered, although they weren't dressed alike in every instance. There was a certain similarity, I think, in the shoes and the nylons that was always consistent, and therefore they dressed you in that manner. What was it like being, how should I say, involved in a criminal activity and yet both protected and watched by the police at the same time? Did that feel unusual or uncomfortable to you?
No, I didn't.
How did you relate to that?
I had this feeling that I was being a part of something, and it was a good feeling. It's kind of hard for me to explain.
Okay. You had a room that you used to service your clients in a hotel, and the room was wired and fixed with hidden cameras. Now, their purpose was, of course, to incriminate the perfume killer, and the room adjacent was occupied by members of the task force, so that you were not in an inordinate amount of danger. At least there was help nearby. And yet, during the course of the stakeout, naturally, a lot of what you did as a streetwalker was recorded on videotape, on audio tape, and was personally observed through high-powered binoculars by members of the task force. Was there any fear in your mind that these, how should I say, proofs of your illegal activities would be used against you, or did you feel that at that point you were above the law in the fact that you were cooperating with them?
Well, I had worked out a deal with them that there would be no problem in that, but as far as them watching it, it didn't bother me.
All right.
Okay.
Now, strangely enough, and you say it that way in the book, so I'll repeat it. Strangely enough, a relationship began to form between you and William Doran.
Yes.
And certainly in reading the book, one has the impression he was not your everyday cop, nor in fact your everyday man. And perhaps this is why this relationship was possible. Could you tell us a little bit about William as you saw him, and what it was about him that made it possible to have a friendship that was perhaps the only friendship you had that was not negotiated?
He was a very special man. He was liked by everybody on the police force and the other people similar to myself that were a part of this group of decoys. And he was a giving person. He was one person that never expected anything when he gave. After a long day, a lot of times I would need just to go for a cup of coffee or a drink, and he would end up sitting and talking to me for a couple of hours and ask me about how I got into the business and why. And he showed a genuine interest in me that no one ever had before.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me feel real good.
So you were friends?
Yes. Actually, we were more than friends.
Were you lovers?
Yes.
Okay. Did at any time you foresee this friendship or this relationship as lovers persisting into the future? Or was this something you felt was happening because of your special circumstances involving yourself with the task force? Could you see the future with this man?
I had hoped that, yes, there would be some type of a relationship for the future.
All right. In the summer of 1985, the perfume killer struck again, this time not more than a block from where the stakeout was. And you write that things got very intense, stepped up, more men were assigned to the task force, and you felt that in your own way you were like the star of a Broadway show, with people catering to your every need, giving you protection around the clock.
It was a great feeling.
Uh-huh. At one point you write that the entire task force on one of your breaks took you to the stage Delicatessen for dinner, a late night dinner. Was it Fantasyland for you? I mean, was it like being the Queen of the May? I mean, surely.
No one had ever treated me that way. I mean, I used to get condos and money and everything, but to have a group of people, especially in that profession, be treating me like I was a star on Broadway was real nice feeling, and I had a lot of power.
How did the other officers treat you? I mean, were they, obviously at some point they must have become aware that there was some kind of involvement between you and William Doran. Did others hope for similar involvements? Were they,
No,
how did they treat you?
No, in the beginning it was a little difficult, especially since I had negotiated deals. They were not too keen on working with me. As they got to know me, though, that I wasn't similar to a lot of other hookers, they ended up working very easily with me because they knew I'd get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Just as an aside, the title of your book is All Yours. Where does that come from?
Well, when a man pays his money, I say I'm all yours.
All right. Now, on the evening that the perfume murder was finally apprehended, he actually became a client of yours. James Wells Campbell approached you on the street and negotiated for you. At what moment did you know that this was in fact the perfume killer, and that this was the moment all the preparation and the waiting had led up to?
I really hadn't known it until we got up into the room. And there's a usual manner that a client has that you can usually tell whether or not you have a nut on your hands or not, or if you have someone that you can deal with.
Mm-hmm.
This man didn't ask for certain things, he demanded them, and before I knew it, he had a knife out. At that point, I definitely knew.
Now, just to touch this lightly, in this business, I'm sure that you, and you write it, so I may as well say that you do come across quite a few people that, as you say, are not stable.
Yes.
How did you know this was just not another unstable client?
He talked about the others and bragged about what he did to them, and said that if I didn't cooperate, that I would be in the same situation.
Okay. What happened next?
The police officers that were next door broke the door through, thinking that he only had a knife. And something none of us realized was that he had a gun with him also.
Mm-hmm.
When the door came down and Bill came through the door, the killer shot Bill.
William Doran was fatally wounded. He died 6 hours later in the hospital. He went into a coma and never came out. The perfume killer was unhurt. He was arrested, taken into custody, finally institutionalized, and never did go to trial. William Doran was the first man, as you write in your book, that meant something to you, and suddenly he was gone. And I wonder how you feel about that. Certainly, we know it was a severe loss, but how has that changed your life? What is life now that it wasn't before?
He was very special to me. And he gave me an opportunity to be in this situation, to have this unique feeling that I had never felt before. In all my years, I had never realized that there was that feeling. And I'm not quite sure what it was or what it's called. But I realized that I must be able to find it again. And I can never thank him enough for that. And I will never forget him for that.
All right. Are you still a prostitute?
No.
Okay. Do you know what life holds for you next? What will you do next?
No, I don't.
All right. Stevie Williams, author of All Yours. Thank you.
Thank you.